The moral victories, they keep stacking up. Okay, the Hornets might only have 10 real wins, but the moral victories, we're more at like 15, 16, and Brandon Miller is the reason to be happy this season. The only reason to be happy this season. What a great performance again against the Lakers. We discuss it all, including trade deadline rumors today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Big shout out, by the way, to FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them, as always, for sponsoring Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet of $5 or more wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. There's David Walker making his weekly Tuesday appearance. You can find him on Twitter at David B. Walker. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. And we can save the man shaking his head for last. That's Doug Branson. You can check out his work on his substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Doug, I know you're not shaking your head over another moral victory because they keep racking up, baby, and that's okay.
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of moral victories. I would like some actual victories, please. I mean, here, first topic, ladies and gentlemen, are the Hornets a moral play-in team or are they a moral playoff team, right? I mean, are they a moral six seed at this point?
I think they're a moral play-in team. I think if it was the moral play-in tournament, the Hornets would be right there flirting with that 10 seed.
They'd probably still get blown out in the moral play-in. Let's be honest.
Steve Clifford, he's coaching for the long game in this moral world. So even if it means you take some moral losses too, because they've got some of those, then
I'll tell you, for the Lakers, that game was an immoral victory.
Yeah, it was. What do you think, David? Are the moral victories stacking up for this team? Are you here for it?
I'm all in on the moral win streak. Shout out to Rod, our buddy Rod on Twitter. You gotta take what you can get at this point in the game here, Doug. And moral, that felt like an actual win with the noise coming from everyone in the stadium. It was fantastic.
I heard a defense chat, and importantly, the Hornets were on defense.
Yes, exactly.
It wasn't the Lakers fan saying this. Okay, the reason it felt like a win in large part was because of what Brandon Miller did last night. Not only last night, really the entire season, and especially this stretch of games where he continues to score over 20 points. And how about back-to-back performances, having reached over 30? The first time he had done it was against the Pacers, scoring 35. Here he is scoring 33 against the LA Lakers. 13 of 25 from the field, 5 of 11 from three-point line. Only 2 free throw attempts in this game, but that's okay compared to the 12 that he had against the Pacers, and was excellent in the fourth quarter. So Brandon Miller just doesn't miss outside shots anymore, and he doesn't miss mid-range jumpers anymore. And so while you might be concerned that he's not going to the rim, like he just crumbles that up and throws it away, because why do I need to go to the rim when I just hit everything from the outside? I'm just going to hit every single shot. And especially in the fourth, he's been doing this since the beginning of the season, where he even, let's say, and that wasn't true here. He wasn't like Ofer. He was still very good. But it's been true even if he has a terrible first half shooting-wise. In the fourth quarter, he forgets all of it, and then he just knocks down 3 3-pointers and scores 10, 11 points. At the beginning of the third quarter against Indiana, he scored 10 points in like a minute, 2 minutes and a half. It's ridiculous. The shot making is ridiculous. He's getting to his spots. He is shooting over the top of smaller defenders. Exactly. He is making the right play. Brandon Miller, feels like he's arrived. It feels like he's arrived.
Well, listen, I threw it out that it might be his team very shortly last week, Doug. I don't know if you remember that, Doug, but you're seeing all these people say it now. I think I was first to plant that flag. I'll take that. But yeah, and you pointed out to it. He's learning that they said it on the radio call last night. He's learning that he's 6'8", right? And a lot of the guys that are guarding him are not. So it's easy for him to get up over some of these guys and get his shot off. And right now, everything looks good. Everything looks good when it's going in. Every shot in the fourth quarter looks like it's right on line and going in. Even when he misses those little floaters in the lane, they look good. his confidence is unbelievable right now.
I've got some stats for your face if you're ready for this back-to-back 30-plus game. So as a rookie, it's the first time it's ever happened in Hornets franchise history for a player to get over 30 points back-to-back or really, I think, in any season. Now, Alonzo had 30 points in 2 consecutive games in his rookie season in 93-94. But it was 30 and 30. Now, to be fair to Zoe, in one of those games, he also had 18 rebounds and like 4 block shots. So he was doing a lot more than scoring as well. But what's interesting about that is that Zoe did that on like 3 days rest. Brandon Miller scores over 30 points on the second night of a back-to-back. Like, that's super impressive.
Yeah, what he's doing is giving us some hope here with the Hornets. Like what he's with everything going so terribly around him, where the only worthwhile discussions for the other guys are if they're going to get traded. That's true of Miles, who scored 40 points in this one,
career high.
That's true.
First 40 burger, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing about it.
It's almost like he knew he almost had 40. It's almost like he knew.
Almost, yeah. Well, and then at the end, we can, there were a couple of things that I guess sour you to that 40-point performance. One being Brandon's performance, and the other one being the hero Carlton shot at the end on
well, let's say what happened. I mean, they had a shot to make it a 1-possession game. That ball should have gone to Brandon Miller. Instead, Miles and Brandon had been doing like my turn, your turn. It reminded me a lot of what last season when Terry Rozier and Kelly Oubre were both trying to win an overtime game, and it would just be like, all right, this possession I'm going to drive to the cup and try to make it, and on this possession I'm going to jack up a 3. Like, there was a lot of that this game. This is like one of the more selfish games of NBA basketball that I've seen from the Charlotte Hornets in quite a long time. But if that's what the game was going to be, then it probably is a good idea to get the ball in the guy's hand who has scored, I think, 16 to that point in the fourth quarter. And instead, Miles decides to take it, steps back, and it was a 1-pass possession. AD sniffs it out, blocks a shot, and the Hornets wouldn't get any closer at that point.
Yeah, and AD had blocked multiple 3-point shots in this game, right? I think it was multiple in this one. Yeah, Anthony Davis was a problem. And then, of course, well, that's another reason we can transition into the attention that the Lakers showed Brandon Miller. After, in the fourth quarter.
Lots of doubles.
After he just went nuclear, the Lakers were, okay, enough of this. We need this to stop. And it's not like they were doing a great job at it initially, but then it was, okay, now all of our resources are going to getting the basketball either out of Brandon Miller's hands or making sure that it doesn't go to Brandon Miller's hands in the first place. And that's when you see Anthony Davis so far out there on the perimeter, which, by the way, is also very helpful to the team. Because Anthony Davis is no longer in the paint. And so now that allows for alleys for other players to go and make it easier for them to score. And so Brandon, even when, okay, yeah, he's crazy hot, he's shooting everywhere and he's making every shot from the outside. So now Anthony Davis has to come out and guard him, and other players are benefiting because of that. That's the kind of effect that he had on this game.
The way he operates in the double teams is crazy. When you consider that he's a rookie, like, I get that he's a little bit of an older rookie, but he doesn't panic. He keeps the ball away from the defender's hands. He doesn't get stripped a lot in those double teams. Early in the season, he was driving into traffic a lot, making some bad decisions there and getting it stolen. He stopped all of that. Like, he only drives when he knows he has a good lane to drive in, and he's not going to get double teamed there. And then he works his way out of these double teams patiently, and he finds someone who can then make a play off of that. He's not just like, you'll see Nick Smith Jr. do this sometimes, like sort of get into trouble and then just heave it across the court. He doesn't know if the ball is going to find a Charlotte Hornet or not. That's not what's happening here with Brandon Miller. He is looking, evaluating multiple options and then making the right call. It is incredible what we're watching. I would just implore anyone who has stuck around through all of the misery of this season and the injuries, I would implore you to just like take a step back, take a mental picture, remember where you were when these 30-point back-to-back games happened, because he's going places in this league for the Charlotte Hornets, and you're going to want to remember, like, oh, yeah, that was the moment that we all knew that this thing was going somewhere super, super, super special. Even the people that bought into Brandon Miller pre-draft, I think he surprised everybody at this point with how quickly things have accelerated.
Yeah, and you look for him just to continue to grow. I mean, LeBron obviously has watched a ton of Brandon Miller this year, and I gave some great pregame thoughts around, how he was handling his introduction to the league and what he needs to do to get better. But he saw it up close last night, and it was Brandon Miller checking LeBron towards the end of the game there too. So you love what you see from Brandon Miller. It's all gravy right now. You're right, Doug. Even the people that are taking the victory lap, no idea that he'd be dropping back-to-back 30-pointers.
They'll say they knew it, but no one anticipated it happening this quickly. I'm sorry.
I like the attack before you get attacked. That's what happens.
I'll apologize. I'll apologize to anyone who. I'll apologize for anyone who thought it was going to happen this quickly because you're being ridiculous.
No, thank you.
I'm sorry for you.
We appreciate the apology. God, humble dude. All right, let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Give some final Brandon Miller thoughts, but trade deadline rumors, they're heating up. On who, you may ask. We'll tell you that coming up in the second segment of Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Coming up this weekend, if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, maybe grabbing your favorite football snacks, placing some super bets. Any of those things are fantastic. And FanDuel also has so many ways for you to end the season with maybe a W or two, maybe even three. That's up to you at this point. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored total in this game, so much more than that. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, so before we came back, I asked Doug if we should just move on to trade rumors or if we had anything else to say about Brandon Miller. And Doug said, well, yeah, I did write something down on a Post-it note. So I don't know if this. So a couple questions. The second one we'll get to. Yeah, second one we'll get to in a moment, which is what did you write? But the other question is this the only Brandon Miller nugget that you wrote down on a Post-it note? Is this special for any reason, or did you write everything else on like a computer? Is this just your normal note-taking practice?
What? No, it's not my normal note-taking practice. I'm trying to get better about interrupting you. And so instead of interrupting you, the moment you said something that made something fire off a neuron go off in the old noodle, I decided to write it down and hopefully get back to it later. And it's important. And what I wrote down, and this was during when you were talking about the fact that he wasn't driving to the hole a lot, I wrote down, Brandon knows he's not strong enough yet, because it made me remember that after the game, he talked about the need to put on pounds, but that was going to happen over time. And it happened defensively, too. There were a couple of times where he got switched on to LeBron, and he did have some foul trouble early in this game. It's amazing that he scored 33 points because he barely played in the second quarter because he had 3 fouls. But he was up against LeBron one-on-one, and LeBron called everybody off ISO, went up against Miller, and just drove right by him, and Miller allowed that to happen because Miller knows if I even try to hit this dude, he's going to get an and one, and I'm going to get another foul, and I'm not going to be available to score. So we have to take that into consideration when we look at his defense and go, okay, is he playing smart? Because he could play bad defense and unintelligent defense. Instead, he's just playing bad defense and intelligently bad defense.
I like that. No, it's so true because you can think of some of the drives that LeBron had, and there was pretty much zero resistance with Brandon.
No one was getting in his way.
No, they weren't. No, you're right about that. And so I think that's a good point. If Brandon Miller is going to at least do the Ole thing, at least he's not picking up the fouls because we need you. We need you badly on the other end. That's so true. All right, let's go to some of the trade deadline updates here. So there are a couple to focus on. If we want to focus on Miles Bridges first, I think that's the biggest name on the Hornets roster that could be moved. So Jake Fisher, go ahead, Doug, put your lure in the water.
We got a big one.
Yeah, like medium size, I think, with Miles Bridges. But we got something here. So Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports said the Suns are willing to offer Josh Okogie, Nas Little, and 2 second-round picks for Miles Bridges. But the Hornets are rumoredly interested in a first.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. I love how these are phrased, by the way. It was like, oh, the Suns would, I guess if we have to, we'll part with Josh Okogie. It's like, you get out of here.
Don't do that trade, please.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like it feels like people like Nas Little and that they would welcome him. Yeah. So because he's the younger player, and North Carolina fans, I would imagine, clearly would like him. But like Nas Little on a good contract, they would welcome that guy coming back in return. Okogie is good enough on defense. A couple second rounders, I guess. You guys laughed at that immediately, and I'm with you to a certain extent. My question is, man, I am not so sure that they are going to get something better. And so if that's the point, then do you just hold on to Miles for the rest of the season and just let him walk for nothing potentially, or have that re-sign value? Like I did not laugh as hard as you guys did. Like I think that's in play to actually happen here for the Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to a balance of, do they want to get anything at all right now? Or the interesting part of that write-up from Jake Fisher was the idea that, hey, now they do have all this money. Now they could sign him to a longer-term-ish deal in the offseason, which would, in effect, make him easier perhaps to move next year when a team getting him knows that they will have him committed for more than just like the rest of this year. So that's kind of the interesting part here. It also just doesn't sound like, and like what, we're 2 days away from the NBA trade deadline. It doesn't feel like a lot of big stuff is bubbling. There's a bunch of teams out there that have got to move off some money at some point, but they may wait till the offseason to do that. So it's interesting. It's almost like they've put in this much, good Lord, this much time and effort into the Miles Bridges relationship that they've really got to ask themselves, how long are we going to hold out? How much do we want to get back? Because it doesn't feel like they're going to stick with him moving forward into whatever this next phase is. So how are they going to kind of wiggle out of that and try and get something of value? It'll be interesting. I mean, I think at this point, even though you would get 2 players like that, it feels like still a bit of a letdown. But to your point, I don't know how much more they're gonna get now. Well, and to be clear, it's a letdown. This entire process is a letdown. And that's where the laughing has its day. I totally get that, because you're right. Miles Bridges, the talent, should not equal Josh Okogie, Nas Little, and 2 second round picks in return. But we know that there is so much attached to the Miles Bridges experience at this moment in time, whether it be the felony domestic violence arrest, whether it be the fact that he's only on a 1-year deal, whether it be the fact that he's making $8 million here, and then he's probably going to be making, let's just call it 20 on a 2, 3, 4-year deal. And you have this real small window to where the leverage can go back and forth. Oh, yeah. And also, Miles gets to tell you where he wants to go. And so all of this stuff equals, damn, it just might be a Kobe Nas Little and a couple second-round picks. Doug, what do you think?
I think that Brandon Miller's ascension is changing the calculus on all of this. Right. I mean, I think if you were like, well, not really sure, Brandon Miller, he's playing pretty good, probably in a couple of years, he's got a shot at being, but it's like, no, I mean, this thing's going to the stratosphere quicker than all of us imagined. And I think that changes the calculus on this, where you may look to move Miles and get something just to make a little room. Because I don't know if LaMelo coming back maybe changes how all of this operates. But look, if the rest of the season, and we don't know if LaMelo's going to come back for the rest of this season, but if the rest of the season is Miles and Miller like taking turns, running the offense, then I don't know if that's really good for Miller necessarily. So I think, look, they've got to take this thing all the way to the end and see if they can get a first rounder from any of these teams. Let these teams bid against themselves and see if you can get there. But ultimately, I think it would be in the best interest of this franchise to move on from Miles Bridges instead of overpaying for him in the offseason and focus on what you can get in return, both in terms of some role players that can play defense, but also in pick accumulation. If it's I don't know. Is there like a currency exchange where you can exchange like 3 or 4 second rounders for a first rounder? Can you go to Adam Silver and say, look, I got 4
like
second rounders?
Not recently, no.
Can we have a 33rd pick?
I've wondered that as well, and I just don't think it works like that with NBA GMs.
I wish.
I mean, Little is somewhat intriguing. You know, super athletic, still relatively young. For the record, I did want them to draft him instead of PJ Washington. That's still TBD. But I think, you know, that's something you can play around with. But at that point, you're just trying to squeeze whatever you can out of it. Like those second round picks, you know, Mitch loves those, but who knows if he'll be here. So, I mean, it will be interesting over the next few days, guys. It wouldn't shock me. Would it shock you guys if they pulled the trigger on something like that or something, you know, similar?
No, it would not. It would not shock me whatsoever. That I think it's very realistic. Now, I do think the Hornets are probably, at least in my opinion, going to hold out as much as they can for a first round pick to see if they can get that from Phoenix, if they get desperate enough. And then Mitch Kupchak says, hey, man, like this is ridiculous. I'm laughing at this. If you give me something, you know, less than a protected first round selection, then no, Miles Bridges is going to be here. And then good luck to you guys. You can bid bid on him against the rest of the NBA. Hey, you got a lot of cap space? No? Cool. You know, give us you can play some hardball here. Even if Miles, you know, wants to play for Phoenix, you can still play some hardball if the Suns get desperate enough. You know, they're all in, right? The window.
Well, the problem
for
is the Suns don't have a first round pick until like my kid goes to college. You know
right.
I mean? So do the Heat. It's the same thing with
the Clippers, like 2030.
Like, oh well, you know, like the thing about those, right? Like, and I know people make a big deal out of that, and it's true. You got to wait a long time to cash in if you use the pick. But true. NBA teams view those as real assets in real time. And so those things can be traded. Now, if you have what is a potential unprotected 2028 first round pick in Miami, which is a big deal if that happens, and then you get a protected first round pick from the Suns, and who knows how protected it is. Maybe Phoenix views it the same way as Miami. It's so far down the road. Okay, fine. We'll make it protected, you know, top 5, top 10, whatever. And now you can trade both of those selections for something that helps Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball if, you know, those two are the foundation.
Now, if it's a 2030 pick from Phoenix, 2030, does that pick still convey if Phoenix is an unlivable hellscape due to climate change or if Arizona secedes from the Union? Do you still – does that pick still convey?
No, that's fine. Come to Charlotte. We're not in Phoenix, okay? Even if Charlotte might be hanging on by a thread, but the pick lives here now. It does not go extinct along with the city of Phoenix. That doesn't happen. We have one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
There was one other Miles Bridges note I did want to make in the last segment. Then we can get to some buyout talk. The old vets on the roster.
Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
No, exactly. Yes, fruit salad, yummy, yummy. Have some, won't you? Next. Locked On Hornets, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and maybe you might be the same way.
Okay, get something off your chest, Walker. What I'm
getting off of my chest is the fact that I am rocking back and forth in fetal position, thinking about Josh Okogie being the best thing that we can get in return for Miles Bridges. And I need to talk to somebody about that. But I can't do that with Doug Branson. I can't do that with David Walker. They're not unbiased. They're Hornets fans. They can't understand what it truly is to view this from a bird's eye view. But BetterHelp can. Therapy can be a different type of source for everybody. So most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team. Not me. The Hornets are my biggest problem. And it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, one other thing on Miles Bridges before we move to the buyout market. So I saw this from Hornets Reddit. So I'm going from aggregation that it's quoted, and then they do that whole thing, right? This is what we do in the podcast world. But according to Vince Goodwill, Vince Goodwill said Rich Paul, who is Miles Bridges' agent, is going to control the process. That's what he's hearing. Charlotte, from what I've heard, has asked some teams that we want your best young player and we want a first-round pick. The question is, who can afford to give that up? So that's coming in from the thought process, at least from Vince Goodwill, on what the Charlotte Hornets might be thinking. And so that's the asking prize. I think that's a fine starting point for the Hornets. Best young player and a first-round pick. And even if your best young player is really like your best young player that you're willing to give up and is not a part of the future to where the foundation just falls out from underneath, that's the kind of guy we're talking about. And then a protected first, like lottery protected, top 20, whatever. I think that's what is the realistic starting point, and then we'll see what happens from there. But ultimately, like, we can just give our final ones here. Like, do we think that Miles is going to call for an unprotected first? Do you think the Hornets are going to get that? Doug, what do you think? Or David, go ahead. What do you think?
I would be surprised if they got that at this point, especially with the contract situation, not knowing what his future will be past this year. It would have to be, someone really making a run at a title imminently. So no, I think that's going to be a tough ask to get.
You think
unprotected? Absolutely not. I mean,
no,
whatever.
If I said unprotected, I mean protected. Yeah, I mean protected first round.
I think there's a shot. Look, I mean, the Hornets, I think, understand, rightfully so, that they have leverage here, that the worst that can happen to them is that Miles walks in free agency, which he was going to do anyway. I mean, it wasn't like, they didn't really have a choice. Once he signed the qualifying offer, at that point, he was entering unrestricted free agency, and the Hornets were going to have to do battle with a lot of other teams. And so, yeah, I mean, the Hornets have all the leverage here. If these guys want, and there's not a lot of talent. That's the whole thing, too. There aren't a lot of sellers in this environment. And that's what, if you are a true seller, you have such an advantage now because of the play-in. Because there are so many teams now that feel like, hey, we're just a couple of games away from getting into that, 10-9 spot, and so we're just going to keep on trucking. And you have a lot of really bad teams like Portland, Detroit, who have said, all right, doors closed. We're just going to figure that this thing is so bad that we've got to figure it out in the upcoming offseason. So the Hornets are in the catbird seat right now. So I think they've got to put all the pressure on and take this all the way down to the deadline.
It does feel like they are the biggest sellers. They are the team that is mentioned as the number one seller in the NBA.
Step right up.
Yeah, so the Hornets, they're the biggest seller, SELLER, and they're in the biggest seller, CELLAR. That's what's going on. Yes. See what we did? Yeah, that's the Hornets right now. Part of that is also attributed to the fact that Gordon Hayward is constantly injured, the fact that they gave him $30 million a year. He's often injured. Steve Clifford did have some quotes to Nick Carboni yesterday about the health of Gordon Hayward. He said he's a lot closer, pretty close to being able to come back. I don't know when, but I would say soon.
After the All-Star break.
Yeah, take that for what you will. But he's also a candidate to be bought out. One thing about Mitch Kupchak, I remember him talking about at the beginning of his tenure, maybe it was like his second year, said he's not really interested. He's not really in the market to do buyouts. And it might have been Nick Batum that he was talking about. I forget what player. But yeah, that was the way that Mitch Kupchak, saw buyouts. And I don't know if that's going to happen with Gordon. Looks like there might be a chance that they explore Gordon coming back after this season.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Oh no, I don't know if that's real or not. Like, yeah, I have zero clue if that's real, but perhaps that's something. Kyle Lowry is much more likely of a buyout candidate.
Nobody wants. Listen, I'll just put it plain. Nobody wants to trade for Kyle Lowry. No good teams want to do it. And so because the thing with a buyout is if you buy a player out, they can't go to one of these teams that are in the apron. But I don't think that's going to be much of a concern for Kyle Lowry because none of these teams are expressing interest. So I think a buyout gets done there. Gordon doesn't want to leave Charlotte right now, and so I don't even think a buyout makes any sense for him. I think he does come back in the second half of this season. I think if he stays healthy, that's a good thing. I don't know if you've seen how difficult it is for this team without literally any playmaking on the floor, but Gordon Hayward does help you with that a little bit, would make things easier if they are going to trade PJ and Miles. It would be nice to have a decent forward to play alongside with Brandon Miller, so that would be a good thing. And look, if it comes next offseason and they can get Gordon Hayward on like a reasonable contract that doesn't hurt their like long-term prospects of bringing players, if it's like a 1-year deal or something for Gordon Hayward to try to get back and get healthy, and it's some reasonable dollar amount, like I don't have any problem with that. Like Gordon Hayward, when he's healthy, is a good player. Yeah. The when he's healthy part only is disturbing when his contract is the size that it is. But when it's not that size contract, then I think you could probably live with however 20 games he misses in a season. Yeah,
but I mean, don't you feel like at some point they're ready to turn the page just on that whole thing of just having guys out all the time, regardless of his salary? I mean, Gordon Hayward has just been a constant when he's healthy player, right? And so like I'm with you, like on a great deal, it makes a lot of sense when he's healthy, you know what I mean? So like not that it would be between him and squeezing a young guy onto the roster or anything, but I wonder if they're just like, we need to do a little more clearing of the house and look for some new voices in the locker room is my only question.
And yeah. So I'm with you. I mean, we've been talking about that on Locked On Hornets forever. When he's out there on the court, good basketball player, really helps the team in different ways. They'll explore, okay, now we just need to let LaMelo loose and let him go do his thing. And Gordon, you have to acquiesce to that. All right, now, Gordon, we kind of need you to get to your spots in the half court. We're bogged down. Okay, can you go do that for us? Cool. Now we just need you to be the connector, right? Cool. But if you depend on Gordon at $30 million, clearly the more money you pay that guy, the worse it is. But even if you commit 10 to 12, even if you commit 10 to 12, that's money that you're spending on somebody that you just can't bank on playing 50 games that season. Right. Can't do it. Yeah. So if you do that, then you are asking for, at max, 50 games from a 33, 34-year-old who has not given you that the last 4 seasons. And you could have spent that on somebody that might be able to give you 80, might be able to give you 70. Like I like it too. I wouldn't hate it. I really wouldn't hate it. But it's damn dicey to do this thing again, even with $20 million off of the contract, which is a large amount of money. That $10 million.
There won't be stakes next season. You have to remember that there won't be any.
I know, but if they're just trying to change the whole culture,
okay, David.
Right,
David. You mentioned that in your last answer, and I want to address that because you asked essentially
right on the post-it.
You asked essentially, don't you think the franchise would want to turn the page? And I operate now from a very simple position, which is that if the fans feel a certain way about the franchise, because there's no doubt the fans would like to turn the page on the Gordon Hayward era, on the injury era, they all want to do that. But I operate from a very simple place, which is this. If the fans want something, then the franchise will not acquiesce. They will not do it. They will act in the opposite way.
It's a new day.
It's Hornets physics. And so, no, I think I'm just trying to prepare folks for the eventuality that, Gordon Hayward gets some kind of contract to stay in Charlotte next season.
I appreciate that. Thank you. This is a, hey, I'm trying to help you here thing. And I appreciate that, Doug, for letting people know how that might go. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. There's David Walker. Go find him on Twitter at David B. Walker. Doug Branson, go check his work out on Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And you can listen to me, Walker Mail, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on WFNZ via Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.